Hi, my name is Robert Shelley, and I'm an attorney with Shelley Law. And my law firm assists physicians in knowing their worth and negotiating better contracts. Today, I'm going to talk about an issue that affects some resident physicians, and I guess something they're interested in, and that's whether a resident physician needs additional malpractice coverage. This is usually a topic that most residents are not familiar with and normally don't worry about. But I think it's a good question and also a good primer when you get out of training. And then malpractice insurance is actually something that you're going to have to worry about. So first, there are generally three types of coverage for physicians, and this is not just residents. This applies to any physician. And so if you're working for a hospital network, many of them are self-insured. What that means is they have a policy that just kind of covers whatever events would happen with their employed physicians within the hospital or hospital network. And in that scenario, most of the time, the physician would never have to pay for the underlying premium, which is whatever it costs to insure the physician on an annual basis. And then if there was some kind of claims-made policy, they wouldn't have to worry about tail insurance either. The two and most common ways that physicians are insured are either through a claims-made policy or an occurrence-based policy. Now, if you have an occurrence-based policy, you do not need tail insurance, and I'm going to define what tail insurance is in a second. If you have a claims-made policy, this is the one scenario where you do need tail insurance. Now, if you are a resident, you will never have to pay for your underlying premium, and you're never going to have to pay for tail insurance either. That's covered by the residency program or whatever hospital it's associated with, or the academic institution that might be a part of it as well. So you're never going to have to pay for malpractice insurance when you are a resident physician. So the question here is, do you ever need additional malpractice coverage? In short, no. Almost, and I mean like 99.9% of physicians do not get additional malpractice coverage. They just use the underlying coverage from their employer, or if they're an independent contractor and they're required to get their own, malpractice, they would just pay, the premium. Now, let's talk limits. So normal limits for a malpractice policy for a physician are 1 million per occurrence and then 3 million aggregate, which means for each malpractice incident in 1 year, the policy limits, or the most that the insurance company is going to pay out, is $1 million. And then the aggregate amount that they'll pay out over the year is $3 million. Now, if you have 3 malpractice incidents in 1 year and they've all reached policy limits, you have bigger problems than worrying about policy limits. There's going to be multiple board complaints. You're very likely going to have your license either put on probation, suspended, revoked, something like that. So it's very unlikely that anyone would reach the kind of aggregate cap. So 1 million, 3 million is standard. Now, some people in some higher level surgical specialties might have 2 million, 4 million. And then there are some states with some pretty heavy caps on damages, meaning they have a limit to what a plaintiff can recover in a medical malpractice lawsuit. And in those states, the policy limits can be much less because it's not necessary to have a limit higher than that. Texas, for instance, is a good example of a place where the policy limits can be substantially less. It might be like 200, 400,000, not 2 million, 4 million. So in short, a resident physician, one, will always have their premium, and if tail is necessary, paid for by their academic or resident institution. And then additionally, getting additional malpractice coverage is just absolutely unnecessary. I guess one fear that some physicians have when I'm reviewing their employment agreement or independent contractor agreement is, and we're talking about malpractice insurance, and well, can they ever come after me personally? Well, theoretically, yes, but in practice, it just doesn't happen. I mean, it would be extraordinarily rare. So in a scenario where the plaintiffs were not willing to settle for whatever reason, and it went to trial and the jury awarded an amount above the policy limits, it's theoretically possible that the plaintiff's attorney could go after the doctor personally. Now, when anyone is sued for a medical malpractice claim, they're not just suing the doctor. They're going to sue the employer and the facility and any of the ancillary providers as well. So it's not like the doctor is 100% liable for all of this. The fault will be apportioned by the jury if it reaches a settlement in favor of the plaintiff. So let's say the policy limit is $1 million for the physician, and the jury awards, maybe there's like some kind of terrible pediatric mistake, and they award $100 million. Well, in that scenario, it's just very unlikely that the plaintiff's attorney is going to go after the physician personally for a couple of reasons. One, it is a bad look on any plaintiff's attorney if a physician has an adequate amount of coverage to go after them personally. And what the plaintiff's attorneys don't want is just extraordinary bad publicity or, the physicians to kind of band together to push for tort reform or caps on damages. All states have physicians where they want caps on damages, but if there was a string of plaintiff's attorneys going after the physicians personally, you can bet if it starts to hit their pocketbooks, that they're going to look at it more closely than they already do. So that's the first thing, is that it's just a bad look on the plaintiff's attorneys. The last thing the plaintiff's attorneys want are caps on damages, and going after the physicians personally is just a easy recipe for them all banding together, getting lobbyists and pushing through tort reform. So they don't want to do that. And then the second thing, and I already kind of mentioned it, is if no physician is attempting to commit some kind of act of malpractice, and if the physician has adequate coverage, or perhaps they purchase a normally adequate amount of tail insurance, they're not going to go after them personally and punish them. And then lastly, if in the extraordinarily rare scenario that they would go after the physician's personal assets, it's usually a nominal amount, somewhere between like $25,000 to $50,000. It's not like they're going to go after your home or anything like that. So just to be clear, this is so rare that it would not make sense for almost any physician to get limits beyond that. And then I guess the last thing to think about, if you have those limits, if they're there, it's red meat to the plaintiff's attorney. So they're going to go after your policy. So if you have two policies, for instance, like the facility, that's they're paying for your underlying premium, and then you get an additional policy, they're going to go after both policies. And so instead of having an award that was limited by the policy, that for your underlying coverage with the facility or the program, well, now there's another policy they can go after, and so you have even a greater settlement amount than you would have if you just would have one policy. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, that's a primer on whether a resident physician needs additional malpractice coverage, and the answer is you do not. If you have any questions about this, I review employment agreements for physicians who are coming out of training every week. If you have any questions about that, feel free to contact my law firm at the phone number listed below in the description. And then I would suggest, I have a ton of videos on issues that affect resident physicians, and then kind of transitioning from a resident or fellow into the real world, where you become a actual earner and professional. And so I would suggest that you can find some other videos that might interest you. Anyway, appreciate you watching the video.